Walt Tilden had spent 40 years around soldiers without once needing to defuse anything, so when the kennel dog lunged for the new tech's wrist, the only thing in his hand was a rake handle. He never got the chance to swing it. The new groundskeeper, 2 weeks on the payroll, quiet as a fence post, the kind of hire Walt figured wouldn't make it past haying season, was already through the gate. She didn't run. She walked, low and even, 2 fingers raised the way you'd signal a dog you trusted with your life, and said one word Walt didn't catch. The Belgian Malinois that had put 3 handlers in the infirmary in 4 months sat down in the dirt like somebody had cut his strings. Walt stood there with his rake and felt, for the first time in a long career of feeling sure about people, exactly nothing. Beginner's luck, he told the ranch office that night, because that was easier to believe than the alternative, and because Dana Calder hadn't said 2 words past yes, sir, and no, sir, since she'd shown up answering an ad for groundskeeper work at Cedar Hollow. Cedar Hollow wasn't much to look at, a guest ranch the Army leased out to its families for reunions and reintegration weekends. 40 miles of fence and cottonwood built on what used to be Camp Ashwood, a maneuver range retired since 1944. Old-timers still found rusted ration tins in the creek beds. Nobody thought much of it. The ground had been walked, cleared, and grazed for 80 years. The dog was a different matter. Duke had come through the program's Battle Buddy adoption track 11 months back. A decorated working dog, 2 deployments. His handler killed in an explosion that had left Duke himself half-deaf and unmanageable. 3 trainers had tried him. 3 trainers had quit. The ranch director wanted him gone before the weekend's big reunion brought 40 families and their children through the gate. He wasn't gone by Friday. He was sleeping outside the bunkhouse where Dana slept, and nobody, not Walt, not the kennel tech, not the director, had seen her so much as feed him by hand. She's got away with him, the kennel tech said, like it explained something. Walt wasn't satisfied with away. He'd run grounds crews under 3 different post commanders, and the thing he trusted least in this world was a quiet person nobody could account for. He watched her rake the corral, watched her splice fence wire with a kind of clean, economical motion that wasted nothing, and decided she was either the best hire he'd had in a decade or hiding something. He didn't yet know it could be both. He kept a private list, the way he did with every hand he didn't trust yet. 3 weeks in, she'd reset a gate, latched the last groundskeeper had fought for a year in under 10 minutes, without raising her voice at it once. A month after that, a mare gone half-blind with panic in a hailstorm let Dana walk straight up to her halter while 3 ranch hands stood flat against the barn wall, afraid to try. Walt wrote each one down as luck, the way he wrote down most things he didn't understand. By the 4th entry, he was running short on luck to credit her with, and hadn't found another word he liked better. The reunion weekend arrived with 40 families, a brass band nobody had asked for, and a backhoe. The county contractor had come to dig footings for a new horse corral on the south field. Flat ground, easy ground, the kind nobody worried about. Walt was walking the fence line when Duke went off the chain. Not barking. Worse than barking, a low, flat, continuous sound Walt had never heard out of any dog, civilian or military, and the dog wasn't running at the backhoe. He was running at Dana, dragging his lead, planting himself between her and the field like he meant to push her back with his whole body. "Get him off the line," the contractor's foreman shouted, because the backhoe had already turned a wide brown furrow and struck something that rang like a bell against the bucket. Bonnie Lathrop, the ranch's program director, came across the grass at a near run, a clipboard still in her hand, 24 children visible at the picnic tables 100 yards off. "Just move the equipment 6 feet and keep going," she said. "We've got a band starting in 40 minutes. Dana didn't move 6 feet. She walked to the lip of the new trench, knelt, and didn't touch anything. Walt had seen plenty of people freeze at the sight of something ugly coming out of the ground. This wasn't that. She went still the way a sniper goes still, the way a man goes still right before he says something that costs him everything to say calmly. "Everyone needs to clear 200 yards, she said. Not loud, not panicked, the kind of voice that made the county foreman actually look at her instead of past her. "Now, children first. It's a piece of farm junk," Bonnie said. "It's a 60 millimeter practice round with the casing intact," Dana said, and there's corrosion staining on 3 more spots of disturbed soil 8 feet that way, which means there's a cluster, which means I am not having this conversation twice. 200 yards. Now, something in the way she said cluster, clinical, exact, the cadence of a person reading off a checklist she'd run 100 times before, made Walt's stomach drop before his mind caught up to why. Bonnie cleared the field. It took 4 minutes that felt like 40. Halfway through, a boy no older than 7 broke from his mother's hand and ran straight for the trench, chasing a ball someone had kicked loose from picnic table. And it was Dana, not Bonnie, not the boy's own father sprinting from 30 yards back, who closed the distance first, scooped him sideways without ever once raising her voice or her hand, and set him down behind the rail fence like she'd done it 100 times in places where the ground gave a person no second chances. The father reached them seconds later, breathless, and didn't manage a word of thanks before Dana had already turned back toward the trench. For minutes, and then the families were behind the rail fence, and the band had gone quiet on its own, Dana standing at the edge of an 80-year-old wound in the earth with one hand resting flat against Duke's shoulder, the dog gone utterly silent and utterly still beside her, like the two of them had done this before, somewhere much worse than a Colorado horse pasture. "How do you know it's a cluster?" Walt asked, once the families were behind the rail fence and the band had gone quiet on its own. "Because the dog told me 4 times before I ever looked at the dirt," she said. "And because I used to do this for a living." She said it the way other people might mention they used to wait tables. Walt had heard 100 soldiers downplay 100 things. This wasn't downplaying. This was a woman setting a fact down carefully, the way you'd set down something that might still go off. The call to the nearest garrison went out inside of 6 minutes. Walt made it himself, because Dana was busy walking the dog in a slow, deliberate grid along the disturbed ground, marking spots with small orange flags she'd produced from somewhere in her coat, like she'd been carrying them the whole 11 months she'd spent raking corrals. 4 flags. Then a 5th. The explosive ordnance team arrived 40 minutes later in a green pickup with government plates. 2 technicians in tan coveralls who walked the perimeter Dana had already laid out and stopped walking like men who just realized somebody had done their job for them before they ever got there. They checked her flag spacing against their own instruments, found it correct to the foot, and one of them laughed once, short and surprised, the way a man laughs when something makes sudden and complete sense. "Who flagged this?" the lead tech asked, looking at the spacing, the angle of approach, the clean 200-yard cordon already holding. "She did," Walt said and pointed. The tech looked at Dana for a long moment, then at the dog sitting calm and watchful at her side, then back at her face like he was trying to play something. "Calder," he said slowly. "Staff Sergeant Calder. Ordnance Disposal, 3rd Detachment. You trained half my unit's refresher courses before your separation paperwork went through." "That was a while ago," Dana said. "You're listed as handler of record for that dog," the text said, nodding at Duke. "Same incident report. I read your file twice when they reassigned him. The medical board separated you two before the paperwork could keep up, and then his transfer record went sideways for the better part of the year. I always wondered where he ended up." Walt felt the ground shift under a story he thought he already understood. He'd assumed the dog had simply taken to her. A stray fondness, the kind that happens between 2 quiet creatures. It hadn't been fondness. It had been recognition. The dog hadn't found a way with a stranger. He'd found his handler. The team confirmed it within the hour. 4 60mm practice rounds and 1 inert smoke canister, relics of Camp Ashwood's last live-fire season in 1944, surfaced by 80 years of frost heave and 1 careless trench. Nothing that should have surprised anyone who'd actually read the old range survey. Surprising only that nobody had, until a groundskeeper and a half-deaf dog read the ground better than the report ever did. The disposal took 90 careful minutes and ended the ordinary way. A controlled detonation a half-mile out, a sound the families mistook for the fireworks they'd been promised that evening. A clean field handed back by men who'd done this exact job 1,000 times and were glad. This once, somebody else had done the hard part of noticing first. Dana spent the 90 minutes sitting on the rail fence with Duke's head in her lap, saying nothing, looking like a woman who had just set down a weight she'd been carrying without complaint for almost a year. Walt sat beside her without being asked, because it seemed like the kind of moment a man shouldn't leave anyone to sit through alone, even a woman who'd clearly spent her whole life proving she didn't need company to get through hard things. "You could have told us," he said. "Saved everyone the scare." "Telling you doesn't clear a field," Dana said. "Knowing how does. There's a difference, and I learned it the expensive way." She didn't say more than that, and Walt, who had spent 40 years learning when a soldier's silence was the whole answer, didn't ask her to. Colonel Adrian Pace drove out from the garrison himself the next morning, before the reunion's closing formation, with a folder under his arm and the kind of unhurried walk that told Walt this wasn't a courtesy visit. He'd read the incident report overnight. He'd also, evidently, gone looking for an older one. He stood the assembled families and the weekend's visiting honor guard in formal attention on the porch steps and read it himself, plainly, the way a man reads something he believes deserves no embellishment. Staff Sergeant Dana Calder, 3rd Ordnance Disposal Detachment, 2 combat tours, 11 confirmed safe disarmals under fire. The last of them a controlled detonation that went wrong by inches instead of by feet and still cost her the use of 2 fingers on her left hand. And ended a hands-on disposal career nobody who'd worked beside her had wanted to see end. Handler of record, military working dog Duke, call sign backdrail, separated from each other by paperwork. Never by choice, the medical board moving faster than the kennel transfer office, a year lost to nothing, but 2 different filing systems that never once spoke to each other. The Army misplaced a soldier and a dog that belonged together, Colonel Pace said, and it took a horse ranch and a backhoe to fix our mistake. He took a worn brass disposal badge from the folder and pinned it himself to the collar of her work shirt, where a rake-calloused hand had been wearing flannel instead of rank for almost a year. He knelt afterward and clipped a new tag to Duke's collar with his own hands. The dog's retirement certification, restored and reissued, the handler's name entered correctly this time. The honor guard came to attention on their own, without an order given. 40 families who'd come for a band and a barbecue stood in a silence that had nothing wry left in it. Bonnie Lathrop, clipboard forgotten at her side, didn't say a word about the schedule. Walt took his hat off. He'd been taking the measure of new hires for 40 years and had rarely been wrong in a way that mattered, until a quiet woman with 2 ruined fingers had spent 11 months proving him wrong every single day and never once mentioned it. "I had you pegged for somebody who'd quit by haying season," he told her after, when the families had drifted back toward the band and the dog had finally, fully, put his head down asleep in the shade of the porch. "I considered it a few times," Dana said. She scratched behind Duke's ear. The same easy, sure motion she'd used to still him at the gate the day she arrived. He didn't. Walt understood, finally, what he'd been watching for almost a year without the sense to name it. Not away with a dog. Not luck, not a quiet woman who happened to be good with animals, but a soldier and her partner who had simply been waiting patiently and without complaint for somebody to notice they belonged to each other and bring them the rest of the way home.